And then just moving on to the third one, and this starts looking more deeply into the the delivery as a coach, obviously on the pitch and in games. And it's this one question of is it helping your players? So fundamentally, it's for us to present and facilitate problem-solving activities through our sessions, which are linked and related to the club's philosophy. Okay, so ensuring that if what we're doing is what we're doing here as a coach, what I've designed, is it linking in with the philosophy? It's clear for the players. Is it game realistic? Is it realistic movements that they are practicing so that I'm not expecting them to do something on a Saturday or Sunday or show something on that day on a match day when actually we haven't practiced the realistic actions and distances that the players require. And then one key thing is especially around what you're instructing the players on. And this one really looks at the communication that you have with your players. Sometimes, and there can be a tendency for us to want to speak quite quickly, continue speaking, and then actually we've spoken for longer than we probably anticipated as a coach, and the message starts to not be as effective and starts not to be helping the players as much as we had initially intended. And so sometimes you might demonstrate this in a different way. You might actually let your assistant go first if you have an assistant, for example, if you're a head coach. It might be that you speak to one of the players and say, look, actually, you as the captain, I'd like you to just have a chat with the players here without us as coaches involved, and then we will talk. It might be you demonstrating something, obviously on the board, demonstrating on the pitch, for example, but really understanding. And sometimes it might be a case of you just stepping back and saying, right, I'm just going to take a pause here before then speaking with the players, just to give that clarity of mind and making sure that what you're giving to them is really helping them. And then there has to be a rationale behind what you are coaching the players. Yes, we can be inspired by the likes of Pep Guardiola's of this world, but we have to ensure that we're not impressing upon them almost that first team level approach upon the players and almost thinking that they are young professional players when actually they are learning. They are just as much as first team are when they have a new coach, for example. They're learning their trade, they're enjoying themselves, and we have to ensure that we are helping the players throughout that journey. And the key thing here is understanding how can I be a master observer. So understanding what do these players, these specific players need from me at this particular point. I'll pause there, Ray, if there's anything.
Yeah, I'm hoping there is from some in the background because 2 weeks ago, Temi, I don't know if you've come across Noel Dempsey or if you know him very well.
Mm,
He works up at the Etihad with UCFB in the football degree stuff that they run. But he takes the 13s, if I'm not mistaken, as at City as well.
yeah.
Um, Spent a huge amount of time with us being really, really different about how he interacts with players, how he communicates with them. That moves us way, 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 way to the opposite end of the scale from what we all believed coaching was
Yeah.
when we were probably starting out, like center of attention, ability to give them all the answers, prepared to give them all the answers. They'll listen to every word I say because I'm not the master observer. I'm the master knowledge
Yeah.
guy or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really thought provoking. And I always think there's something when something comes up time and time again. Now you kind of think, okay, I might need to hook onto something here. Does that
Mm.
make sense? At what point was there a moment for you where you turned from that center of attention kind of instructor to, for example, master observer?
Yes. So I think for me there were two occasions really. The first occasion actually was very early on in my journey. I had a player. Basically, we were having a back and forth while training was going on. and him telling me, no, I wouldn't do that in a game. No, I wouldn't do that. No, you're wrong. And we were just going back and forth. And at that point, I realized, actually, Temi, you've got to take a step back here, and you've got to realize, yes, as much as and when you're going through your courses as well, you feel as though, okay, I'm gaining knowledge. So I have the knowledge. I've gone through this. I'm going to present it. But actually, the players are the ones who are experiencing it. They're on the pitch, and that's where I started to that's where the change started to happen really for me. And it was a case of saying, look, start listening to the players a lot more, have that approach more than actually I'm the coach, and so this is what we're going to do, and speaking first all the time, but actually recognizing what knowledge there is already from the players who are playing, no matter how young they might be. And why I say no matter how young they might be, because I had a player at Arsenal who he was under 11, he was under 12, but 11/12. And he used to receive the ball whilst holding on to the defending player. And I always thought to myself, you've got to move off. You've got to move off into space, move off into space to receive. And when I went on the course, one of the coaches said, one of the educators said to me, Temi, consider that he might be doing it on purpose. So okay. I spoke to him, I said, why do you do that? He said, well, I know that I can receive the ball and still maintain my balance whilst holding onto this player, and then there are less players for me to have to play through the lines too. And he would still hit the right pass. And so that really opened my eyes again to the case of, actually, for him, if that works and he sees a reason why, and actually it still is effective, fantastic, continue on.
That's really interesting. And it's just allowing them to have a voice, or allowing them to
Yeah.
have the back and forth ding dong you had with the guy. Was it kind of was it like a battle of wits? Like, I have to, the more this goes on, the more I have to win this. So there's a
I
row.
think so. Yeah, I think so, because as a coach, it's almost like, well, you're now challenging my authority here.
It's not
And
about you. It's about the 15 others.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I think as a young coach, it was a good experience for me in the sense that I had to have early on, because it made me reflect and change my coaching in terms of being a master observer, really start focusing on that a bit more, and yeah, and not continuing in that same vein.
It's interesting because we're right off the back of the whole Salah Klopp thing yesterday, aren't we? That's
Yes, yes.
um, and we will never truly know what's gone on. But when it's played out in public, you do have this battle of um, Ferguson was all about it, and as good as Ferguson was at his role at United, it was a very old-fashioned shop steward kind of um, like, I will win every argument no matter what, but
Mm,
public, behind closed doors, we can talk about it.
yeah.
Um, David asked you, I don't know, maybe you've part answered this anyway. David in the chat asks about changing your communication, coaching points based on the level of player you're working with. Um, Sometimes difficult to change my performance expectations when working with players of a different level. Um, I don't know if I made sense, but hopefully the question did.
Yeah, it does. So it was actually very interesting. It's a really good question, because I went from Tottenham to Southend, and it was a real eye opener for me in terms of when we're talking about communication, because the level of player obviously wasn't as high as I was used to at Tottenham, and I couldn't understand why the players couldn't do certain things. But then I realized that actually within my communication, I had to be more patient with them. I had to, with my tone of voice as well, ensure that I'm not showing any frustration, even though maybe internally there was still a bit of frustration. I could not show that to the players, because they were at that certain level. They weren't bad players or anything of that nature, and I didn't want to. And it's important that I didn't make them feel that actually they weren't up to scratch. And that was a lesson for me in relation to, actually you need to curate your level of communication according to the players, and firstly recognize that actually they are very good players at the standard that they are.
yeah, 100%. And look, if David, if you don't mind my penny's worth as well, I've traveled, and because I've traveled, one of my light bulbs was Kim Paulson was his name. I need to get Kim on here actually, but he was the national team coach in Tanzania at the time I was there, and we became
Mm,
friends. And he had a great phrase. He said, no matter what it is, what group it is, he used to say, find them where they are and take them from there. And it's again, it's such a simple thing.
brilliant. Yeah,
You know what? You're absolutely right, because if you don't do that, it's actually just about you, then, isn't it?
yeah,
Oh, he
yeah.
can't do something for my team, and he should be able to do that by 14, or she should be doing this at this level, blah blah blah.
Mm,
Whereas if you tweak the, do you know what, I'm going to figure out where they are and then just help them to the next bit.
yeah,
Um, it stuck with me, and I've never really forgot it. And it's kind of my first exploratory part, is like, where are we at with all this? I know
yeah.
it's a really broad thing to say, but it's like, where are we at? What do you need from me to help you get better? Um,
Exactly, exactly.